Olympic boxers from Taiwan and Algeria continue to face attacks on their gender, despite being cleared to compete in Paris by the IOC. Women speak out on Taiwan's expanding gender pay gap.
从以前古早就是重男轻女，所以我觉得这个现象应该还是会一直存在下去。
The assassination of Hamas's top political leader in Iran brings the Middle East to the brink of wider conflict. Plus, foiled in Paris, but Taiwanese fencer Chen Yitong is already looking ahead to the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Reece. President Lai Ching-te has taken to social media to throw his support behind a Taiwanese boxer competing in Paris who's been caught in the middle of a gender controversy. Lin Yuting and another Algerian competitor have been cleared to compete by the Olympics Committee despite previously failing a gender test. The decision to let them compete has triggered a furious debate online, with some high-profile figures weighing in. Joyce Tung reports.
After being cleared to fight for Olympic gold, 28-year-old Taiwanese boxer and two-time world champion Lin Yuting should be focusing on the competition, but is instead embroiled in another unwelcome controversy over her gender. Now that includes renowned author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, who's previously angered many with her outspoken stance against transgender rights. Rowling posting on X, "What will it take to end this insanity? A female boxer killed?" It's a reaction to the International Olympic Committee's decision to clear Ling and Algerian boxer Imani Khalif to compete after both were disqualified at the World Championships last year, having failed gender tests administered by the International Boxing Association, a federation no longer recognized by the Olympics.
We all have a responsibility, by the way, to try to dial down this and not turn it into some kind of witch hunt. These are regular athletes who've competed for many years in boxing. They're entirely eligible. They are women on their passports, and that, I think, is enough said from me.
The Chinese Taipei Olympic Committee has emphasized that Lin's eligibility complies with international rules. Throughout her career, Lin has always competed as a woman and does not identify as transgender. It's a position Lin's team has maintained ever since she was stripped of her World Championship bronze medal last year, a disqualification that Lin said she had never dealt with before. While the question of whether transgender women should be allowed to compete in women's sports is fiercely debated, with critics citing safety concerns to female competitors, it's an issue that's brought invasive speculation into many female athletes and their bodies. South African sprinter and double Olympic champion Caster Semenya is still fighting a more than 5-year battle in court to overturn World Athletics rules that force female athletes with differences in sexual development to medically reduce natural hormone levels.
My last chance winning Olympics was 2016. So Paris Olympics is not really my goal. My goal is more on winning my battles, against the authorities. It's me fighting for what's right.
As for Lin, the shot to compete in Paris is a high point in her 15-year boxing career. Lin has fought among the best, including two-time British Olympic gold medalist Nicolas Adams in 2016. Though Lin lost to Adams, speaking to TaiwanPlus in the lead-up to Paris, Lin described the sacrifices she's made to stay motivated to bring home Taiwan's first gold medal in the sport she loves.
再重来一次，让我投胎再重来一次，我可能还是会选拳击。我就是要好好的把握巴黎奥运这场比赛，那为自己、为台湾，然后拿到一个属于我们台湾的奥运金牌。
And Lin's chance is coming up soon. She's the top seed in the women's 57-kilogram featherweight class in Paris, earning her a first-round bye, and will take on Uzbekistan's Sitora Turdybekova on Friday. Ethan Chen and Joyce Sun for TaiwanPlus.
You can watch our interview with Lin Yuting on her journey to Paris on the TaiwanPlus website. New figures show that Taiwan's gender pay gap is the worst it's been in over a decade. And it's not just about salary. John Van Trieste explains.
The Labor Ministry has bad news for the country's women. Its newest analysis from 2022 shows they fall far behind men in terms of total earnings, 160% behind to be exact. That's an 11-year high. The calculation wasn't based on only the gender wage gap, which at 15.8% in 2022 was on the higher end when compared with Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. It included other sources of income, like stocks and other investments. Even though Taiwan's wage gap has narrowed somewhat since 2022, many women still feel they don't get what they deserve in the workplace. And while frustrated, they aren't really hopeful things will change.
虽然说现在目前男性也可以请产假、陪产假跟孕婴假，但是其实多数时候我们看到的，我们传统的家庭观念还是会认为这是属于女性应该负责主要责任的部分，所以也就造成很多雇主在聘用女性员工的时候，就把这些未来有可能产生的困扰隐藏在薪资结构里头。
我觉得这是跟企业的那个文化有关啦。从以前古早就是重男轻女，所以我觉得这个现象应该还是会一直存在下去的。
Job bank websites say one reason for this gap in total income is that fewer women get into high-paying industries, and fewer of those who do manage to get far up the career ladder.
无论在白领的高薪工作或蓝领的这个技术工作比较高薪的一个部分，其实这个男女比例比较失衡的情况下，也造就所谓的这个男性的一个薪资会高于这个女性。
But gender equality activists say lingering patriarchal norms and a lack of transparency are also to blame.
多数的台湾女性，她可能会被预设，她必须要负担家庭的照顾。国外其实他们透过了一些家庭工作平衡的制度，来让就是雇主不会那么容易的去预设女性她在投入劳动上面一定跟她的工作是有所冲突的。过去几年也不断的在呼吁说，台湾应该要仿效欧洲这样子的薪资透明化的制度。
But so far, such transparency remains just an idea. And for all its progress towards gender equality in recent years, especially in politics, in the workplace, Taiwan has yet to get its glass ceiling to budge. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The US is set to expand limits on exports to China of semiconductor equipment made in other countries. Reuters reports that countries affected by the new rule would include Taiwan, Singapore, Israel, and Malaysia. However, chip-making equipment from Japan, the Netherlands, and South Korea would be exempt. The Biden administration has been clamping down on high-tech exports to China amid national security concerns and fierce competition with Beijing. Thousands of people have gathered in Iran's capital for the funeral of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed in a strike in Tehran on Wednesday. Iran has threatened a harsh response to the killing, which it blames on Israel. Rosie Greninger reports.
Outrage across the Middle East after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the top political leader of the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Haniyeh was killed by a targeted airstrike in the Iranian capital Tehran, just hours after attending the inauguration of the country's new president. The assassination has increased fears of a broader conflict in the Middle East, with member countries of the United Nations calling for a peaceful solution.
We fear the region is at the brink of all-out war. The international community should make all diplomatic efforts to avert this.
Haniyeh's assassination came less than 24 hours after an Israeli strike in Beirut killed the top military commander of Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. That in retaliation for a rocket strike on the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. Protesters in Tehran mourning Haniyeh's death, demanding reprisal. A call that Ali Khamenei, the country's supreme leader, says he will heed. Like Hamas, Iran blames Israel, with Khamenei vowing harsh punishment for the breach on their territorial integrity. Israel has neither claimed nor denied responsibility, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned against any retaliative aggression.
מאז התקיפה בביירות נשמעים איומים מכל עבר. אנחנו ערוכים לכל תרחיש ונעמוד מלוכדים ונחושים מול כל איום. ישראל תגבה מחיר כבד מאוד על כל תוקפנות נגדנו מכל זירה שהיא.
Iran and Israel have exchanged blows before, one of the most significant in April this year, when Iran sent a barrage of missiles towards Israel in response to the killing of senior Iranian military figures while in Syria. Tensions between the two countries have been stoked by the outbreak of war in Gaza between Israeli forces and Iranian-backed Hamas. Since hostilities began in October, more than 39,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 100 Israeli hostages remain held in Gaza. A ceasefire deal was being negotiated, but the assassination of Haniyeh, Hamas's negotiating leader, will complicate that process.
I don't see any meaningful, long-standing solution on the horizon because it looks like the Israeli leadership is trying to address its broader security challenges across the region vis-a-vis Iran, and is choosing to not prioritize ending the Gaza war and securing the release of its hostages. And that tells us exactly where we are.
As funeral prayers begin for Haniyeh in Iran, the escalating tensions in the Middle East have left global leaders scrambling for diplomatic solutions. But with the death of two of its militant foes in less than 24 hours, Israel is facing more than the wrath of mourners. Alex Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Israel also says it has confirmed that Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif was killed in a strike in mid-July. That attack by Israel killed more than 90 other people. Hamas has not made any immediate comments to the latest announcement. The UN says Palestinians detained by Israel have been subjected to torture and mistreatment. It's released a report on the alleged abuses, which are described as widespread.
Detainees say they have been held in cage-like facilities, stripped naked for prolonged periods, wearing only diapers. They tell of prolonged blindfolding, deprivation of food, sleep and water, and being subjected to electric shocks and being burnt with cigarettes.
The UN's Human Rights Office says that Israel has arbitrarily detained thousands of Palestinians since October 7th, when Hamas carried out a surprise attack on Israel. The UN's findings could be used by prosecutors at the International Criminal Court, who are looking into crimes by both sides. Israeli prison authorities say they operate within the law and are not aware of the abuses described in the UN report. Taiwan says a $60 million deal with the US to install the Link 16 military system should be completed by 2026. Link 16 is a military communication network that connects aircraft, satellites, and troops. Once installed, it could allow the US and Taiwan to share information. Military officials say the Link 16 system would be used to upgrade Taiwan's existing fleet of F-16 fighter jets. The United States is Taiwan's biggest provider of military equipment and weapons. That's why all eyes in Taipei are on the results of November's US elections. For more on what the outcome could mean for Taiwan's defense, Jaime Okan spoke to Rupert Hammond Chambers, president of the US-Taiwan Business Council.
With U.S. elections coming up in November, I want to take a look at U.S. arms sales from both administrations that are going to run. Looking at the Harris administration, what can we expect in terms of future cooperation with Taiwan and providing weapons to Taiwan?
I think what we can expect is tightly managed security assistance. There quite rightly will be focus on training. There will quite rightly be focus on political engagement as it relates to defense issues. In respect to arms sales, we'll see a steady cadence as we have done through Mr. Biden's government, but it will be tightly managed. Even though we've had a good number of arms sales to Taiwan over the Biden administration, they've been modest, and as a USTBC, the US Taiwan Business Council, has noted, they have been almost exclusively sustainment and munitions. No larger platforms, no focus on the sorts of platforms and systems that can assist with blockade, with quarantine, with gray zone. That for the most part has been completely ignored.
And we've seen what a Trump administration has provided to Taiwan in his time in office. What can we expect from part 2 of a potential Trump administration? Are we going to see a continuation of these big ticket purchases, these really expensive platforms to Taiwan for its defense?
I mean, we just the data quickly going back through the Clinton administration, Mr. Trump sold more weapons in 4 years than the Clinton administration sold in 8, the Bush administration sold in 8, the Obama administration sold in 8, and Mr. Biden's government sold in 4. So certainly we had a permissive environment. And, you know, it was partly related to the fact that the process had been broken under Mr. Obama and that it needed to be fixed. So there had been an extended arms freeze during the Obama administration. So there was a great deal of pent-up demand, and that was released into a permissive environment, and as you correctly note, we got some large sales.
Former President Trump has made some pretty controversial comments about Taiwan not paying for its defense. Do you think that sat well with Taiwan? Or do you think it's going to make maybe Taiwan think twice about engaging with the United States and instead going maybe elsewhere to find weapons and defense assistance against the threat it's facing?
Taiwan has nowhere else to go other than the United States. The United States is the most powerful military in the world, comfortably, and there is no going the other way. A partnership with the United States is essential to Taiwan's sovereignty. So that's not the issue at play here. I think what's important is to understand the context of Mr. Trump's comments. Where I put them was in the same context as Mr. Trump's comments and pressure on Korea and Japan in his term in office, where he raised the pressure on them to do more, to expend more, to contribute more to their own defense. But I think, and in fairness, there's bipartisan consensus here. Taiwan does need to do more. Taiwan does need to spend more. And that, in that regard, he's absolutely right.
That was Rupert Hammond Chambers, president of the US-Taiwan Business Council. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he's willing to give official vote tallies to the country's highest court. That's after the opposition and the international community widely rejected his recent election victory. But after days of violent protests, it's unclear if this move will silence his critics. Chris Gorin reports.
After a highly contested presidential election, widely considered to be fraudulent, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is willing to give the official vote tallies to the nation's highest court.
Que el gran polo patriótico y el Partido Socialista Unido de Venezuela está listo para presentar el 100% de las actas electorales que están en nuestras manos, y espero que la sala electoral haga lo mismo con cada candidato y cada partido.
The statement comes as the United States and countries around the world have been demanding the official voting data for days, rejecting the official result, which declared Maduro the winner.
The international community, the United States included, is running out of patience on waiting for Venezuelan electoral authorities to come clean and release a full, detailed data on this election so that everyone can see the results.
The UN, the European Union, regional groups, and several of Venezuela's Latin American neighbors have all disputed the official results. Exit polls and independent analysts say that it was the opposition, led by Maria Corina Machado and her candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, which won the election in a landslide. Venezuelans who doubt the official result have protested across the country. Human rights groups say a police crackdown has resulted in more than 1,000 arrests and as many as 20 deaths. That includes a 15-year-old boy, Isaias Fuenmayor, whose family says he was just passing by.
Le dispararon a quemarropa, la bala iba para él, no fue una bala perdida. No sé por qué le dispararon a mi hermano no estaba haciendo nada, mi hermano iba pasando por ahí.
In the capital Caracas, the streets were calm but tense on Wednesday, with many residents still feeling anxious.
La gente está asustada por lo que está pasando. No quieren salir a la calle a trabajar ni nada de eso. Tan temeroso de lo que pueda pasar.
Along with Maduro's willingness to submit official voting data, he's also called for investigations into what he is calling the opposition's coup attempt. Given the level of distrust on the streets and around the world, it's unclear if presenting evidence this late will appease his critics. Delphine Chen and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan badminton player Zhou Tiancheng has claimed another victory at the Paris Olympics. Zhou defeated Japanese player Kodai Naruoka to advance to the quarter-final. It's his third consecutive time making it to the Olympic quarter-finals after doing so in Rio and Tokyo. Also in badminton, Dai Ziying was eliminated in the group stage after she lost to Thailand's Ratchanok Intanon in the women's singles. It's an early exit for Dai from her final Olympics. Meanwhile, Taiwanese boxer Wu Shih-yi has advanced to the women's 60-kilogram semifinals, guaranteeing Taiwan's first medal of the Games. It comes after Wu beat Ecuador's Maria Jose Palacios 4-1. As Taiwan competes for international glory at the Paris Olympics, many of the athletes have failed to advance to the next round. But for them, that doesn't necessarily mean the end. Our reporter Sandy Chi caught up with one of these competitors, Taiwan's top fencer Chen Yitong, to discuss his experience at the Games and his next moves.
So, right before your matches, how did you feel since this is your first Olympics?
It feels great. I feel like this tournament was a great experience, being able to perform in such a big stage in front of a huge crowd, and especially competing against their home country.
Looking back on your performances at this year's Games, what do you think you could have done differently?
So for my first match, I felt like I was really too stiff because I was nervous. I kept telling myself, like, this is just another competition. It's just another competition. But then as soon as I walk on the stage, the atmosphere, everything, it felt different. And I started getting a little stiff and nervous. But then after the first match, I think I really adjusted with the flow of the competition, and I performed way better in my second match. But then I think I got a little impatient, and I tried to put too much pressure on him. Even though that was kind of my plan, I wanted to put some pressure, but then by putting too much pressure, I left some openings for myself as well.
What are your next plans? Since this is your first one, do you plan to continue to compete in the future Olympics, or what do you have in mind?
I think what I learned the most from this experience is to adjust quicker, learn to adjust with the tournament, whether it's stretches or breathing. I hope to do better in LA 2028. For now, my next goal is probably Nagoya Asian Games and the next University Games. I think I'll stack up on experience and hone my techniques. So hopefully I'll do better in the next Olympics.
That was Taiwanese fencer Chen Yitong speaking to Sandy Chi. In 1960, one of Taiwan's most renowned athletes won his country its first Olympic medal at the Games in Rome. Decathlete C.K. Young faced off with training partner, friend and competitor Rafer Johnson from the US in a historic showdown. Audiences around the world were glued to the screen as the two sports legends battled for the decathlon gold. Wesley Lewis has the story.
A historic battle for Olympic glory. Taiwan's Yang Chuanguang, or C.K. Young, known globally as the Ironman of Asia, versus Rafer Johnson from the United States. The two athletes reached their biggest milestone in the 1960 Rome Summer Olympic decathlon event. Both shouldered the weight of not only representing their countries, but also their respective communities. Young, an indigenous Amis, and Johnson, an African American. They first met 4 years earlier at the 1956 Melbourne Olympics.
He was my hero before, my idol. When the first time I saw him in Melbourne, boy, he was a giant then, and I was so skinny guy.
In the lead up to the 1960 Olympics, Taiwan's government sent Young to the U.S. to train with Johnson at UCLA. There, they developed a competitive bond.
I was lucky that I went to UCLA, practiced with Rafer, and we became friends.
The pair trained for 2 years together, finally facing off in Rome. As decathlon athletes, they had to train in 10 different track and field events.
Decathlon basically determined the greatest athlete in the world. 10 events, you compete at the highest level against athletes from all around the world. And if you come out on top of those events, you are widely considered to be the best athlete in the world.
In total, Yang won 7 of the 10 events, but Johnson still came out on top, pulling ahead with big leads in events like shot put and discus. In the last event, the 1,500-meter race, both Yang and Johnson gave everything they had. Afterward, the two came together in an athlete's embrace, a moment captured in one of the most iconic photos in sports history.
We walked together for a while, leaning on each other physically the way we had leaned on each other emotionally for the past 2 years. So great was my respect and admiration for him. I just wanted to be next to him at that moment.
They would remain close friends for the rest of their lives, calling themselves the two-man United Nations. When Yang was diagnosed with liver cancer, Johnson was there by his side. And at Yang's funeral in 2007, Johnson delivered a eulogy to his companion.
He had a heart bigger than any athlete I've ever known. A great champion and a great man.
In the end, these two legendary athletes and the connection they made exemplified the capacity of sports to create deep, lifelong bonds across countries and cultures. Kama Shu and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, let's take a look at the Summer Festival fireworks show in Dadaoteng in Taipei. I'm Reece. Take care, and we'll see you next time.